welcome to another episode of Nurah Speaks, and I am your host, Nurah Muhammad. I'm very happy to be with you in episode 280 of the podcast. Thank you for joining me for this episode, and I am excited about this episode because this episode concludes our Know Your Numbers series. So we talked about blood glucose and our blood sugar. We talked about blood pressure, and we talked about our blood cholesterol. And this episode, we're talking about our body weight. How much do we weigh? Now, our body weight is simply a measurement of our mass, the mass of our bodies. And as I mentioned in the last episode, I believe that body positive or a body positive movement, that conversation should be about ensuring our bodies are healthy, not just looking good or looking fit or looking attractive, because an attractive body may not be a healthy body. And so while that body may, uh, you know, provide some vanity for us or be appealing to someone else's eye, our body can be primed to introduce health issues if we are not aware of these important health metrics. And so it's important that we know our numbers, our body weight, our body mass index is it's important that we know that. And I do want to say that the BMI, the body mass index, it is not a perfect tool to measure one's health. However, it can be an indicator. And so I'm including that here, although I do know that there is some controversy surrounding using the BMI, the body mass index, as a tool when dealing with health. But I think that we should use all of the tools or have all the information available to us so that we can be informed and make decisions and make new decisions or just kind of get a gauge of where we are. So I want to say that the BMI is a measurement that's taken, and really it is a measurement dealing with our height and our weight. And so there are scores. So when you are using a BMI calculator, it'll ask you how much do you weigh, what is your body mass, and it'll ask you for your height. And there it will calculate your body mass index. So a BMI that is in a healthy range is 18.5 to 24.9. Overweight range is 25 to 29.9. Now, if you have a body mass index of 30 or over, that puts you in the obese range. And again, this is just a gauge, but it is an indicator, right? Sometimes, life changes, stressors, uh, the circumstances of life, whether you're taking care of children, whether you're taking care of aging adults who have needs, or if you're taking care of a special needs person, a spouse that you're taking care of. Work is crazy. Sometimes we may not be conscientious of how much exercise we're getting, of what we're eating, our weight fluctuations. We may not be aware of that. So it is as important that we check our blood sugar, that we know our blood pressure, that we know our blood cholesterol, as that we know our weight or our BMI. Now, the implications of being overweight, and there are many, but I will share a few. Now, we can experience some body aches, right? Our knees can become sore because we're carrying excess or extra weight. We could have issues with our feet, right? There's a condition called plantar fasciitis, and that can be a very painful condition of the feet. Excess weight can contribute to that. Insulin resistance or diabetes can be contributed to from being overweight, right? High blood pressure. Being overweight can contribute to high blood pressure. Being overweight can contribute to increased cholesterol. And so you see that all of these are related. Blood pressure, blood glucose, body aches and pain. This can be contributed to having excess weight on our bodies. And so it's important that we know, just because we may look fit or you may say, I like, the shape of my body, just know that carrying excess weight or having excess fat on our bodies can be can have a negative implication with our health. And as I said, dealing with weight can be a very sensitive subject for a lot of people. So this podcast and every episode that you get here is just to be informing. It is not to shame. It is not to make someone, feel poorly about themselves, but it is to provide information to a community that needs a lot of attention. And we certainly need a lot of attention as it relates to our health, as it relates to our body weight, as it relates to our cholesterol and our blood pressure. We're seeing our children more and more are overweight and some obese. Where I work in a small urban town that's surrounded by rural towns. And this town does not have a supermarket, but this town does have corner stores. This town does have liquor stores, pizza shops, sub shops, steak shops, hoagie shops, fast food. And when I'm outside just getting some fresh air or taking a break, and I'll do that sometimes around the time that school is letting out. And I look at the children who are walking home from school, and so many of our young people, and these are predominantly young Black children, are overweight, boys and girls. And then seeing them, with the bag of chips or and the soda or the red juice or the blue juice, going into the corner stores because they have a couple dollars, and buying junk food on their way home from school. And I always feel so concerned because that has negative implications on our health, right? On the health of our children, and some habits that we have that begin very, very early, appetites that we get that begin very, very early, can be hard to break in a later age, right? And I can remember coming home from school, and especially in the fall, and my great grandpa would have a bushel of apples. If you know what a bushel is, he'll have a big basket full of apples, and my favorite were Golden Delicious. And so after school, me and my cousins, we would come home, and we would eat, a couple apples if we were hungry, and then we'd have to wait for dinner. There wasn't a lot of snacking in between meals. In where I lived, there certainly weren't corner stores, and that kind of put a check on, the idea or the opportunity for overconsumption. And so, because food is so readily available and accessible, especially in our urban communities, and having corner stores or bodegas that predominantly sell junk food. And it's not just urban areas and bodegas, and we like to single them out sometimes, but they're not the only ones. If you go to on the East Coast, the Wawa, you go into a Wawa, it's predominantly junk food, although there may be some salads behind the counter, or some fruit packs. It is predominantly junk food. And if you go into the grocery stores, there's also predominantly junk food. So like I said, I don't want to single out urban environments, but I think about where our children are accessing snacks or accessing food on their way home from school, and the habits that are starting very, very early, that definitely can have negative implications. And habits are hard to break. And that's why it's so good to create good habits, because habits are hard to break. And our children are carrying extra weight, excess fat. We as adults are carrying extra weight, excess fat, and our blood pressures can be impacted, our blood sugar, insulin resistance, cholesterol, joint aches. Our bodies are not meant to carry so much weight on it. I even think about bodybuilders, and these men and women, but predominantly men, I think about, who have done some extreme training and carrying a lot of muscle or lifting a lot of muscle. And somebody that is squatting 300 pounds, right? And that was what, in addition to their, 175 pounds, that's a lot of weight to put on your joints, your feet, your knees, your hips, your back. And we know of many people who have done these extreme activities that now are really suffering and had to have surgeries, because it's just not natural for our bodies to carry extra weight, and it becomes a burden to us. And so this is not a podcast or an episode telling us, hey, lose weight, lose weight, lose weight. I say, let's just be healthy. And as I talked about in the episode about blood pressure, about cholesterol, about our blood sugar, I talked about ways that we can bring our health metrics into healthy range if they're not in healthy range, and ways to keep those metrics in healthy ranges if they are in healthy ranges. And guess what? The guidance for achieving a healthy body weight or a healthier body weight, it is the same guidance, right? So I say that, and I think this is exciting because this is not Nora now saying, now here it is, you have excess weight, or you now learned that your BMI is a certain number. Well, now you got to go on a diet. No, no, no. I don't believe in diets, but I do believe in lifestyles. I believe in healthy choices, and I believe in knowing what healthy choices are. So the guidance that I provided previously about blood pressure, about blood sugar, about cholesterol, it is the same here, right? So eat whole foods, eat more fruits and vegetables. We don't have to deep fry everything. We don't have to deep fry our vegetables, batter them up and deep fry them. But adjust your palate if you don't eat a predominantly whole food diet, plants, vegetables, fruit. If you don't eat a predominant diet, increase how many vegetables you have on your plate and reduce how much processed food that we put on our plate. And I think, let's not set a goal to lose weight, because that can be stressful. Looking at the scale and saying, all right, I have to lose 20 pounds. That can be stressful. Instead, say, I'm going to eat more fruit and more vegetables. And I'm going to find creative ways to prepare my plate, to prepare my dinner, to prepare my lunch. So, one, eat more fruits and vegetables that are full of fiber, that are full of the phytonutrients that are in plants. Vegetables, they contain so many nutrients that are good for us, that are good for our bodies, and that our body needs to function, right? And sometimes I know that we think that we have to eat meat because we need protein. And I will remind you that the bull is a very strong animal, has a lot of muscle, and that bull is not eating meat. The ox, a very strong animal, but these animals are not meat eaters. Right? So they're not sitting down and saying, I need a steak, but they're very, very strong animals. There are plants and beans that have so much protein in it. Quinoa has a lot of protein in it, right? So we don't have to use the excuse that we have to eat meat that has a lot of fat in it and that has negative implications on our health. I mean, I don't know that I shared this in previous episodes, but meat is a carcinogen in the same class as cigarettes. And many of us don't know this, and many of us aren't told this or taught this. Right? So the idea that we have to have a lot of meat or meat with every meal, that is not good information, and it's not good for our bodies. So I encourage listeners and viewers to eat a whole food and a predominantly plant-based diet. Now, I'm not saying stop eating meat. I am not saying stop eating fish. But I am saying eat more fruits, eat more vegetables, and eat more foods that are high in fiber. And meat does not have fiber in it. And I want to use an example and just talk about calories and where things can go wrong, right? So if you think about potato chips, and you say, well, I'm hungry, as our children may be come walking home from school and they want a snack, and they reach for the potato chips. And they have those little snack bags of potato chips, right? We have to eat a lot of potato chips to get full. And we know that potato chips are not made to be eaten in moderation, right? Because you can't eat just one. Isn't that the tagline? You can't eat just one. However, an apple, if you're hungry, you eat a couple apples. But it's hard to eat three because it has so much fiber. Potato chips don't have a lot of fiber. So I want to share something with you. 300 grams of potato chips versus 300 grams of an apple. 300 grams of potato chips have 536 calories. 300 grams of apple has 52 calories. 300 grams of potato chips has 34 grams of fat. The apple has 17 grams of fat. How much sodium is in 300 grams of potato chips? 8 milligrams. How many grams of sodium in an apple? Just one. And the apple has fiber. The apple has water in it. The apple even has sugar in it, right? So think about what we eat when we're hungry. And also, I'd like to share that, and I've shared this in previous episodes, but the snack foods have something called hyperpalatability, meaning that these foods are engineered to just explode in our mouths, right? Whether it's the crunch of it, whether it's the salt that hits us, whether it's the fat, they're manufactured to excite our palates. And we can become addicted to that. And the foods are being made to be addictive. I've never heard someone say, I can't stop eating apples. But it's hard to stop eating potato chips. But there's a reason why for that. And we have to know that our willpower or our discipline is being sabotaged by how these foods are being manufactured. So I don't want to just say you have poor impulse control or I have poor impulse control. No, these food companies, and I use the word food lightly, but these processed food manufacturers, they have a target on us and they are engineering these foods to create a hardship for us in just trying to have discipline or trying to have willpower. And so I want you to know that, because as you are deciding, I'm going to eat more fruits and vegetables, I'm going to eat less processed foods. When it becomes difficult, I want you to know why. And the why is because these foods have been engineered for us to want more. You know how people use drugs, and even after they've been in recovery, they say, no, no, I'm still addicted, and the pull is still there, right? Because drugs are made to be addictive. A drug is hitting those centers in our brain that on a scan will light up. Well, the same thing happens when we eat certain foods. And there are videos that you can find on YouTube that shows the area in the brain that lights up when we eat processed foods are the same areas that light up in the brain when someone uses hardcore drugs. And this is not by accident. So when we think about a person's willpower, we think about how difficult it is to change our children's diet from a diet that is giving them red juice or soda or juices to predominantly water, right? Or lightly sweetened lemonade. You'll see you have to fight with your children when you change that because they are addicted, because these foods are addictive. So it's not just the children, it's us too. But to know that these foods are being manufactured to give your willpower a challenge and a serious challenge. And sometimes we just don't have the willpower. You know, they talk about now understanding that addiction is a disease, right? And now we are being encouraged to give addicts grace at a time where they were just demonized. They were castigated. Well, that's not the case anymore. The same is for this food. This so-called processed food that is so readily available to us. So just be thoughtful about that and give yourself grace. But there's a saying that if it's in your house, it's in your mouth. So if we know that we have certain issues where, you know, I can't eat just one Oreo. Don't bring them in don't bring them in the house. I can't eat just a few potato chips. Then don't bring them in the house. I can't eat, you know, just a half a bowl of ice cream. Then don't bring it in the house. Because if it's in the house, then it may be in your mouth. But understand where our challenges are. So, what can we do again to help ourselves bring our health closer to a healthier weight? Is to eat more whole foods, eat less processed foods, give ourselves time for our palates to adapt, because it will take time and you'll experience that. But, you know, we're very capable people and we're a very adaptable people, and our palates will adapt. Something else is we can just limit the added sugar, right? So if you are a coffee drinker, if you are a tea drinker, just limit how much sugar that you're adding to these drinks. If you're making iced tea or lemonade at home, start reducing the amount of sugar that we're adding, even if it's your cereal, right? Maybe, instead of eating frosted flakes, you eat corn flakes, right? And don't add sugar to the corn flakes. I promise you, our palates will adjust. The same way that we are used to adding, our taste buds are expecting the salt, or our taste buds are expecting the sugar. But if we reduce it incrementally, we will adjust. I can say I was someone who used to put sugar in my coffee. In fact, I was terrible. I would go to a certain uh, uh, coffee donut chain, the one I'm talking about, and I would order this is so ignorant. I would order extra cream and extra sugar. Oh, and I loved it. And I never thought about that. I never thought about, do I need this much cream? Do I need this much sugar? I just loved the way it tasted. And I realized at some point I'm drinking coffee that tastes like coffee ice cream. And I happen to love coffee ice cream. And so I stopped adding cream to my coffee, and I let myself get used to it, because I just want the coffee. I love the way coffee tastes, and I let myself adapt. And then I stopped adding sugar to my coffee, and eventually I adapted. And now, if I was to have coffee that had cream and sugar, I don't like the way it tastes. And I just use that as an example to say how much we can adapt. Extra cream, extra sugar, to now just black coffee, and I love it. And we are people that can adapt. And I encourage us to give ourselves time to adapt, because, sometimes that's where the biggest challenge is that transition from one thing to the next, and not giving ourselves time. And I'm just letting you know that if this is something that you're willing to do, you're willing to try, give yourself and know that you will need it time to adapt. So limit how much sugar. Stop drinking soda. Stop drinking juice. Juice has a lot of sugar in it. Drink more water. And or maybe you say, well, I really like the taste of something in my I like the taste of juice. Perhaps buy frozen fruit and put that in your water. That's good too. And whether it's strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, and you don't even have to add sugar to that. You can add a little honey to it, right? You can put some fresh mint in that water. There's so many ways that we can kind of reconfigure what we used to do by just doing things differently in incremental steps, not doing everything all at once, because that can be overwhelming. Some people have the countenance to say, I'm quitting everything. My health is out of control. I'm going to do a radical shift all at one time. And then for some people, it's gradual, but you have to know yourself. So eat less processed foods, eat more whole fruit and whole foods, fruits and vegetables, food that has a lot of fiber in it, eat less sugar, and limit alcohol intake. And this one can be difficult for people as well. I think about during the pandemic how the liquor stores were an essential business or an essential need. And many people will say how they over imbibed in alcohol, and some developed an alcohol issue. Alcohol, that too, raises our blood pressure. Alcohol has sugar in it, right? So limit our alcohol intake. I would say stop drinking it altogether, because it is not really good for us, but perhaps that is something that you enjoy. I would say from time to time. Don't make it a daily thing. Don't even make it a weekly thing. Some people say they'll have a drink on special occasions. I know that, as I said, drugs are made to be addictive. And, as a people, we have high potential for addiction. We know that these things run in our families. We are predisposed to overindulgence and overconsumption of things. And alcohol can easily be one of those things. So I encourage us to limit our alcohol intake. And then lastly, I encourage us to move our bodies. Remember, in previous episodes, I said, take a 10-minute walk. And I say 10 minutes because it's going to feel so good. You'll walk for 15 or 20, but take a walk, move our bodies. No, you don't have to go out and start a jogging program. If you want to do that, that's fine. But just move our bodies more. Moving our bodies more does so much. It increases our muscle mass. It's good for our balance. It's good for our mental health. It's good for our blood pressure. It's good for our blood sugar. Exercise increases the production of, increases HDL, the high density lipoproteins, the good cholesterol that helps remove the bad cholesterol. So, movement is so good for us. So, whether you're inside walking on a treadmill, whether you're outside, taking a walk at a park or walking around your block, taking a walk during your lunch break, move our bodies. It is so good for us. And remember, it is not that we have to have a goal to lose a designated amount of pounds, right? Or say you want to get to a certain BMI. Take the focus off the number, off the scale, perhaps, right? And there's something called NSVs, non scale victories. So perhaps you're somebody and you may be only able to walk around your block once without feeling too overwhelmed, too out of breath, right? And then now maybe you're walking around your block twice. Maybe you were walking for 30 minutes and now you're walking for 40 minutes, and the confidence and the feel good moment that gives you, right? Your clothes are fitting better. That might not shift the scale, right? But maybe you're walking more, you're eating more whole foods, fruits and vegetables, high fiber foods, and now you're feeling better in your clothes because the scale may not be the issue or the focus for you, but it's how you feel. How are your clothes fitting? Are your knees feeling better, right? Eating less foods that create less inflammation in our body is going to reduce that pain in our knees, perhaps in our hips, right? We're less stiff because we're moving our bodies more and eating more wholesome foods. Because remember, these processed foods, they have so much toxicity in them, so many chemicals, right? I mean, if you looked at some of the chemicals in these processed foods and somebody said, well, here, instead of eating it in the potato chips or eating it in the tasty cake or eating it in whatever in the ramen noodles, I'm just going to give you a vial of it. Just drink it. You would say, I'm not taking that, but it's in the food and it can have a really harmful, and it does have a very harmful impact on our bodies. These foods create inflammation, they can create mucus in our bodies, they can spike our blood pressure, right? And none of that is good for us. But when we're eating more whole foods, we're eating less processed foods, we're getting fresh air, we're walking, we're thinking good thoughts. We are, I don't know, we're involved in less stressful activities like gossip or, some of the things that we do that create stress, conflict. We just feel good. And when we're doing things and we're moving in a positive direction, we're going to want more of that good feeling. And so we're going to go towards that good thing that creates that good feeling, whether it's taking the walk, or maybe for you it's jogging, or maybe for you it's some strength training. Or maybe for you it's how you feel after eating that big salad or eating those sauteed vegetables. You're going to feel better when we do better. So we don't have to put the focus on the scale. We don't have to put the focus on the number of our BMI score, but we can put the focus on our everyday activities that help us create better health. And we want healthy bodies. And so some of these metrics are what we need to know to have a gauge of our health. And what do you think? I mean, some of this, is it doable? I think all of it is. I hope that this series, Know Your Numbers, has been good guidance for you. I hope you appreciate what I've shared with you. And again, wherever we're starting, it's the right place and it's the right time to start. You may say, man, I'm like 100 pounds overweight. I don't even know where to begin. Just start somewhere. Give yourself grace. Be easy on yourself. Yeah, your cholesterol. Yeah, it's high. Or your blood pressure is high. Yep, yep. Dealing with your blood sugar might be a little high. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know. I know. And combining it all can just feel so overwhelming. So just do one thing at a time. Take a positive step in the right direction. And even in that small baby step, you have made and accomplished something meaningful. Keep going. Let me know what you think. You can email me at Nurah Speaks. You can leave a comment on the YouTube page or the Facebook page or the Instagram page. Let me know what you think. I just want to help our people and to say something positive that's useful. So much negativity. I know we have wars, there's political wars, there's military wars, there's male-female wars. We can go to war for our health, right? And that can start in our kitchen. That can start with lacing up our sneakers. That can start with us thinking about our grocery list and shopping. Well, I'm gonna also add this tidbit. Don't go grocery shopping when you're hungry. You may have heard this before. Don't go shopping when you're hungry because, we'll be buying things and putting things in a cart that we really don't need and probably really don't even want. But in the moment of hunger, and discipline is something that we can exercise, but we have to get better at it. And that too is gradual. But remember, these food manufacturers, they're coming after us. They're aggressive. They're very, very aggressive, right? And so they package things in these brightly colored packaging, reds and yellows and blues. But guess what? You can get you a red apple. You can get you a yellow squash. You can get you some blueberries. You can get you a purple eggplant, you can get you some oranges, you can get you some green spinach and eat the rainbow. And instead of getting the chips that have the yellow packaging or getting the tasty cake that has the red packaging, we can get the colors, eat the rainbow, and our health will thank us. Thank you for listening to this episode of Nurah Speaks. It is my pleasure to be able to bring great content to you. I value you so much, and I value this work. Until next time, stay in peace.
We were brought here as a piece of property. And to keep that piece of property, it is to not allow the property to know the value of the property. What I mean by that, if you had known the history of yourself, you would not have been made a slave. And you won't be a slave now if you have a knowledge of yourself. It's hard to enslave a person that have equal knowledge with you. You just can't do it. And so this knowledge of yourself is the thing that will free you from what you have been suffering from.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Nurah Speaks. Look out for a new episode coming at you fresh next week. And if you want to learn more about me and the work that I do, you can visit my website, NurahSpeaks.com. Or if you have a listener question, you can email me at Nurah@NurahSpeaks.com. You can also follow Nurah Speaks on X, Instagram, and Facebook at Nurah Speaks. I will be sure to include links in the show notes. If Nurah Speaks has value to you, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share with family and friends. And be sure to check out previous episodes. And remember, don't just join the movement, be the movement. Stay in peace.